Hello everyone and welcome to Mountain Lake Journal. I'm Tom Halleck. This week, the tragedy in Parkland gives rise to a national movement. The mass shooting in Florida a month ago has inspired a student-led movement. Across the country this past week, tens of thousands of students at hundreds of schools walked out to remember the 17 victims of the shooting, to demand safer learning environments and action from legislative leaders. About half of the student population at Saranac Lake High School joined in the walkout, part protest against gun violence, part tribute to the victims of the massacre at Marjorie Stoneham Douglas High School. They stood in a snowstorm in silence for 17 minutes, 1 minute for each victim of the shooting.
We're standing with Parkland behind the recent Parkland shooting, and we are passionate about making students feel safe in schools.
This is really an issue that directly affects us, and we can make a change. And I think it's great to see how many kids were passionate about this and who wanted to show that they cared so deeply.
Students here and nationwide are looking beyond simply making a statement. They want to have a voice and bring about change.
What has been the community response to the school shootings that have happened?
One of the lawmakers listening is North Country Assemblyman Billy Jones, who met this past week with school administrators, teachers, and law enforcement officers for a roundtable on improving school safety.
We have learned a lot about different responses from each of the school shootings, which unfortunately we have to take those lessons and put them into place.
This is a lockdown drill. Please go into lockdown mode at this time. Again, this is a drill only. Go into lockdown mode at this time.
The state requires school districts to practice lockdown drills several times every year.
How's the reaction from the students after these drills?
They are nervous. They are thinking about what ifs.
But a counselor at Saranac Central, who used to work in a state where drills are held monthly, says eventually students adjust.
It is beneficial because they get better, more practice, they're better prepared, they're not as worried, they get through those fears.
But some school districts, including Malone, are taking a new approach to how they respond to an armed intruder or active shooter.
There seems to be a bit of a shift. Some Vermont schools are employing a system called Alice, which from what I've briefly been able to tell has more of a fight back and flee component to it than what we currently do. And I offer no opinion about which is best. It felt like for the last decade we were all absolutely on the same page, that we would lock down and hide and shelter and the police would penetrate immediately, and it felt logical. But as that evolves differently between different districts, I'm concerned, because inherently one approach must be deemed by law enforcement more prudent than the other. I do, from a school perspective, have concerns about, is what we're doing still the right thing?
We're bringing the Alice training to Malone in July, and I guess the basic thing on that is, do we sit and cower in a corner waiting for law enforcement to show up, or is there somebody there capable of attacking this guy and taking him down? And we've kind of worked with the team, and I'm kind of in favor of it. There are some benefits because there's going to be 5, 6 in Chateaugay. Who knows how long it'll be before the first law enforcement officer arrives here. Do you cower in a corner and wait for the guy to come in after you, or do you try to fight back?
The village has an armed resource officer like the one who confronted and shot a teenage gunman this week at a school in Maryland. New York Sheriff's Association and Senate Republicans want the state to find money to put them in every school.
I know Malone, absolutely, I'm not going out on a limb here, loves the resource officer, loves that presence there, very engaged presence with the students, and the security is there.
That's crucial. Obviously seconds matter, but also the value that we've seen them, and I've been working with SROs, either state police or sheriff's department for 16 years now. It's a lot of the groundwork that they can do ahead of time.
Sure.
When you do identify students and families or acquaintances, is that they have resources that we don't have.
If the purpose is to have an armed defender present, I have some concerns. If it's to have relationships with students, have an ear to the ground, be a resource for for administration, probably very useful, but that is probably the number one question regarding school safety these days. Should we have an armed guard?
There was less consensus, though, on arming teachers.
If we get a call of an active shooter, we've got to go in the building immediately. I don't want to encounter an armed individual teacher that I'm going to mistakenly think is the shooter.
Every teacher loves their kids. You know, every teacher, they'll die to protect their kids. If a teacher is willing to go through the proper training, and instead of having your children hide in a corner with a book over your face and a shooter comes into the classroom, most teachers would fire back. Do we want to see every teacher with a gun in their hand? No. You know, there's a certain few that would.
The weapon of choice of these shooters are assault weapons. Are we going to be armed with assault weapons? And if we're going to be have assault weapons, are they going to be loaded? Where are they going to be stored? I don't see any situation where this would be the answer.
Some believe schools should be adding more layers of security, like you find at the airport.
I think we have to start looking at securing the building to begin with. You know, I mean, common sense tells you if the person can't get in or it's very difficult to get in, that's where you have to start. You can't get on a plane without going through these things, right? You can't get on a plane. Why wouldn't we put that kind of security in our schools for our children?
Do we think it's a good idea to put metal detectors?
We have them in many other places and not in our schools, and why wouldn't we?
Teachers say they, administrators, and school resource officers often see warning signs. But one of the major questions at this meeting was what happens in the days and weeks after an at-risk student is removed from school.